Live-breasted roller here, Brian. Don't go anywhere. Oh. They're still quite close by, so I'm just going to try and get into another good spot here. This is a juvenile lilac-breasted roller. It would have been born this season, just judging from its coloration. Such pretty birds. And this one actually likes these two perches. Very often when we drive past, it's either on one of these two perches, the one that it was on initially. Oh, there's a yellow-billed hornbill in the same tree. I didn't even notice it. Oh, beg your pardon, that looks like a red-billed hornbill. Yeah, apologies, a red-billed hornbill. And a lilac-breasted roller. Now, will it let me get my camera out and change lenses in time before it flies off again? Let's see. It's most wildlife photographers' ambition to get the perfect lilac-breasted roller shot when they're flying, and it's not an easy one to achieve. I've yet to get one that I'm happy with, but I'll certainly try my best again now. As you can hear, it's a very still afternoon, very few birds are calling, and that's typical in the heat of the day. The bush tends to quieten down quite considerably, and you almost wonder where everything goes. And as it cools down this evening, we'll be more likely to see more animals and start hearing more birds calling. It's almost deathly silent compared to what it usually is like in the early morning and late afternoon. And it's wonderful to be out during the transition from the quiet of the day until the cool of the evening, when things really do liven up. But it'll still be a couple of hours until then. I'm sure a lot of the guides would have suggested to their guests going out a little bit later this afternoon, and it is often the case that guides will fine-tune safaris according to the weather and what's going on. Oh, I missed it. Only a miracle if I got one of those. Oh, not bad. But room for improvements, certainly room for improvements. Okay. How was that for you, Brian? You could well fly back up to that same... Oh, there it goes. Well, it didn't look like a successful hunt, that. Did you see him catch anything, Brian?
No.
unlike the hummerkop this morning. Yeah, that was really good fun watching that hummerkop hunting. VM uploaded the footage and we watched it in slow motion as it was slowly lifting its leg up and placing it so delicately into the water. And then obviously the final strike when it did catch that second catfish. The VM really did a good job and a great sequence to watch. It's important that I check very carefully for tracks. Like I say, there's no vehicles that drove in this area this morning, so there could be some very useful information left on these roads for us from where animals moved last night, but nothing very useful back there. Oh, dung beetle. Haven't seen one of them for a while. Oh, look at that. So once they do tumble a long distance, as that one did down the hill, I'm not sure if you saw it again. Apologies, my monitor doesn't work, so I don't. But watch now. It should do a 360 to get its bearings. Oh no, it didn't even need to do a 360 there. But often, after they've been pushing for a while, and you can imagine reversing, concentrating on pushing that huge ball relative to its own body size, and then when it tumbles it may lose its directions or bearings, although this one seems to know what's going on. But they go up on top, do a bit of a 360, work out what's going on, and then continue. It must be one of the most frustrating things to do out here for any of the animals, is the dung beetle's job of maneuvering these balls to wherever they feel their larvae is safe to then hatch inside there and grow up. So they lay an egg in there, and when that egg hatches, it's got a pantry of food to feed on. Wondering if we're going to be able to get a slightly closer view. This could work. But I mean, look at that mountain that he's going to have to try and get up. if there's one animal that's got never give up programmed deeply into its brain, it's the dung beetle. Because without... Oh, looks like he may be altering his route slightly, which will be good for him because he was trying to get that ball up an almost vertical bank, whereas this slope he's approaching now is a bit better incline, but still very steep. And I'm guessing that ball of dung that he's pushing probably weighs 3 or 4 times what it weighs, at least. Oh, look at that! Nearly! Well done! That was incredible. I don't know how he managed to do that. But it's not over yet. Because if he makes one wrong move now, that ball could tumble all the way back down into the road. No. That was close. This is a pivotal moment, I think. If he gets it up through there, he may be gone. I mean, that is just incredible power. One of these dung beetles actually overtook us, and when I say overtook, it literally over us, directly above us, on the landy on the way into work one morning, and we were probably going about 30 miles an hour, and this dung beetle just flew between us, kind of almost at eye level, and just went straight past us. So they can fly really quickly, powerful animals for their size. Oh, this isn't looking good. He's lost a few inches there and heading back into... Oh no! It happened. Back to square one. But like I say, they do not stop for a second to get their breath, to think about things. It's just go, go, go. Get the bearings, double check, back to work. All in reverse. Basically, it would be the equivalent of us doing a handstand, I guess, and pushing something backwards. Ridiculous. Often what can make it difficult is that this could well be a male, well, I'm sure it is, and when the females find them, they'll just latch onto the ball, so it's an extra piece of cargo, and obviously it prevents that ball from rolling as smoothly as it typically would without a female latched onto the side of it, so that can be an added obstacle for the male in trying to maneuver it from A to B. I've always wondered what they are aiming for, trying to achieve in terms of where they move it to, why it's necessary to move it so far from the dung where they found it, because they could just roll it up there and leave it close to the dung, I would think. What would they be achieving from heading into a different area, I'm not entirely sure. Oh no, oh no, back to square one. Well, wish you all the best, little dung beetle, and thanks for the entertainment. We're running out of time to show you cheetah, and the area we are going into this afternoon is probably our most likely spot one if one ever was to pop. So think part of it's about seeing the fastest mammal on it. One before male leopard tracks heading down northern boundary here, and our western boundary is just behind us. West. It looks to be a big male, possibly a mvula. Oof. Very big male. We'll just put that in the memory bank. Copy, thank you. Apologies for that small break in signal there. Just to let those of you know who weren't out this morning, Mark has taken a few days leave, so it'll just be myself until Friday afternoon's drive when Mark will be back. He needed to attend to some things back home, nothing urgent, nothing to worry about, but just to let you guys know, it will just be one vehicle out until Friday, and Friday will be my last drive, and on Saturday I am off, sadly, for the next adventure, which isn't nearly as much of an adventure as this is. So either way, I'm looking forward to it, and the change of scenery is always good, especially if after you have been out here for a long time. It's good to reset the clocks and get out of the bush for a while. And Cape Town is one seriously beautiful city. If you ever do come to Africa and haven't been, try and make a plan to get down to Cape Town, especially if it is the summertime. Winter can be a little bit suspect there. Unlike the rest of South Africa, Cape Town has a Mediterranean climate, and basically what that means is they've got winter rainfall. The rest of the country's got summer rainfall. So the Cape Town summers really are beautiful, but winters might not be the best time of the year to go there, but still a wonderful city to go and play around in. So looking forward to getting back down there. And good to get the qualification under the belt. It's just a 2-week course, so nothing serious, but it will be useful for me regarding my future plans which are ultimately to become a private guide who tailor-makes safaris for people that want to come out and go along on safari with them. So it would be useful for me in that. I would highly recommend to a lot of clients, and a lot of clients would request to spend some time in Cape Town if they did come to South Africa. So to have some proper guiding knowledge and skills for the Cape Town leg of the safari would be useful. So that is why I'm doing it. This is quite an awesome sight, and I haven't noticed it before. It's quite an awesome sight, and I haven't noticed it before. It's an unlike couple. They've twined and are now, you could almost say, married to one another. So here we have a knobthorn acacia tree that's growing in amongst the marula, and that really is wonderful because they must have grown at almost exactly the same speed in order for one not to outcompete the other, and that way they've managed to kind of somehow share the limited sunlight, and different parts of the knobthorn poke out in different angles, all achieve. So it's really interesting how they have all managed to find enough sunlight to grow almost as one tree. How interesting. Typically, if the one was slightly bigger than the other, it would have outcompeted, and the shade that it casts over anything below it would therefore cause them not to grow nearly as effectively or efficiently. And that's why often right below trees you may find, like here, an almost circular patch where there's not too much growth. So, an interesting and unlikely couple, a marula and a knobthorn tree, joining forces. The two of the iconic trees of this area that we find ourselves in. Got a question through from Sally. Good afternoon, Sally. And Sally is asking if there's any updates on the buffalo calf that's lost track of its herd and its mother in all likelihood, and has now joined up with a bachelor herd of buffaloes. Sadly, there hasn't been any sign of it, so we're not too sure what's going on there, but there's a strong chance it will pop out. If it is hanging around these bachelor bulls, they typically don't move large distances like a breeding herd of buffalo would. So in all likelihood, if it is still alive, it's still on the property. So we will be monitoring it, and hopefully when the breeding herd does come back, which they are likely to do at some point, then it may reunite. My only concern is that it may have lost its mother. There was two lions, the Matimba males, that killed the buffalo, and I'm not sure if it was a male or a female actually. It's a really cool bird that's just flown into this tree, but it's highly secretive. Oh, there it goes. There's a grey-headed, oh, there's another one. Did you see it land down there? And another one, it must be a family. Have you got it there, Brian?
I've got it.
Well done. So I know we're far away, but at least you'll be able to hopefully get a glimpse of it It's a grey-headed bushshrike, and one I haven't been able to show you before. Let's drive down this road and go for gold, and hopefully we'll be able to get a closer image. It must be a family of them because there's so many of them together, so possibly adults taking their chicks out on an exploratory flight. Maybe we'll get one last glimpse of them. Did you get a decent shot there, Brian?
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Could you see the grey head?
Kind of.
Cool. Where have they gone?
Where they went.
Well,
No, they went that way into that thick bush.
yeah. I just did a pearl spotted owlet call, that whistling call, and sometimes birds will come in and mob these little owlets, and I was hoping that these might change course and come back and have a look. But no luck. Well, I've only seen one or two of those since we started broadcasting here, and then all of a sudden there's like 4 or 5 flying past. And you notice there's a lot of birds, not just, well, we've now seen a few hornbills, but a lot of the birds, just like that light-crested roller we saw earlier, that was a youngster, that are hanging about with their chicks and teaching them the ropes. So makes for some really great viewing, seeing, and just nice to see these successful families flying around with their youngsters, teaching them the ways wild. Now, none of my weather predictions have been right so far, really. I've been way off with the weather predictions. Either way, I'll continue to give them to you. And I'm predicting a monsoon-like torrential rain this evening. Just got this strange feeling in the air. It's not so much from the clouds that we can see, but just the feeling that I'm getting. You can almost taste it. Hopefully it will only come down, though, if it ever does come down, after we have got back to the Manuletti this evening, because the half-an-hour trip back can be doubled in length if it's raining. So ideally we'll be back in the comforts of Camp Manuletti camp before anything serious comes down. If not, we just pull, there's a tarpaulin that we pull over the vehicle every night in case it does rain, and just to keep it covered and protected. And we pull the tarpaulin over the vehicle and make a small little gap in the front and drop home like that, so we're all covered by this tarpaulin. It's like a mobile tent. And it is always actually an adventure. We always have a good time and laughs when we have been stranded in the rain. Apologies for the break in signal there. We were just going through quite a deep dip, and you didn't miss out on anything, thankfully, because that would be terrible if we did miss out on showing you something due to a lack of broadcasting abilities. So it's important to stop at these road junctions and make sure no animals may have veered off this major road onto any of these smaller ones. No sign of anybody interesting going down there. Here's some birds calling on our left-hand side. Really pretty birds, they're green wood hoopers. Make a loud cackling noise. It's a bit too far away. Creep forward, see if we can get an angle. In Zulu they call them hlegabafazis, which means a laughing woman, because their sound, I guess, does slightly resemble a group of ladies having a good old time, chuckling to one another. There's a pretty bird. No, that was a pretty bird. It was a cinnamon-breasted bunting. Now, what I am hoping for is for us to find tracks of a female leopard here. I've yet to actually see the mother, but I've seen her 2 one-year-old cubs just once, and it was just down in this riverbed that we're approaching now. And when I did drive on this main road yesterday afternoon, we did find tracks of her heading in an easterly direction away from our property, but she could well have come back. So just going to have a close look around here. It would be wonderful to see her and 2 one-year-old cubs. It's a great age to see cubs because they're quite large and playful and independent. If we saw all 3 of them together, it's almost like seeing 3 adult leopards together. In another 6 months' time, those 2 will be getting to the age where she could well kick them out and they'll start having to fend for themselves. At that stage, they do naturally tend to stay within their mother's territory, but just not get looked after by her and fed by her, unless of course they manage to find her with her kills, in which they will then try to steal as much of it as they can from her. There will come a point in time where she won't tolerate that anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stay on this northern boundary until we get to our eastern boundary and just check for anything coming into our potentially going out. Questions just come through from Lynn. Good afternoon, Lynn, and welcome on board. Lynn is asking whether leopards will go into water on hot days like this to cool down. I guess similar to what tigers would do. And not that I've ever seen. The only time I've ever seen leopards go into water is to try and sometimes catch catfish. And even then you can see they don't really enjoy it. So I think it's fair to say that leopards in general do not like water, as do lions. Interestingly, tigers don't mind it, so not sure the science behind that, but I've never seen a leopard in the water cooling off, and I have only ever seen them evading water at all costs, especially when crossing rivers. That can be entertaining. What jaguars they do, yeah, jaguars are very happy in water, so that's an interesting one to think about, because a jaguar is essentially very similar to a leopard. It's just a larger version thereof, you could say. But jaguars in the Pantanal will swim readily across large rivers, and even I've seen some crazy footage of jaguars hunting the caiman crocodiles, I think they're caimans, or crocodiles or alligators or whatever they are that occur in these rivers. And the one clip that I remember vividly is a jaguar swims to a sandbank, and it literally stalks up onto this barren sandbank and catches a alligator or crocodile that was probably the same size as it's in weight, and then continue to grab it, drag it back into the water and swim back onto the mainland where it would have fed on it. And apparently these sightings are becoming quite popular, or not popular, quite common, as these jaguars are specializing in hunting these crocodiles or alligators, whatever they are. And it's really helping the ecotourism in that area, because now a lot of people are going there that typically didn't go there before, simply to see these jaguars hunting. So it is a great success story for conservation, because unless people are seeing animals, and unless people are getting into wilderness destinations to keep those areas funded and protected, it's very difficult for these animals to get looked after. So this is an example of an area that previously wasn't really being exploited for tourism, but now it is, so that's great. I'm not sure if I'm seeing the same tracks from yesterday. They could be. Difficult to tell though. This also is a fairly busy road, or one of the busier roads. And therefore the signs or track gets covered in dust or actually just driven over by vehicles and makes difficult for tracking. The question's just come through from Kim. Good afternoon, Kim. Welcome on board. Kim is asking whether we ever managed to find the elephants that was leaving behind a trail of blood that we followed. And sadly not, it did cross north out of our property on the same, or across this boundary road that we've just driven. So they headed up past Buffelshoek Dam and had a drink there, and according to their tracks continued out of our property, sadly. So no idea of what happened there. Would have been really interesting. And what would also be interesting regarding elephants is if we can find the cow that was being followed by those bulls, because to see elephants mating, that would be something else. I've only ever seen it once, but it was awesome. I've just got a sneaky suspicion I've turned down the wrong road, and I will therefore need to turn around. So sadly no sign of it, but what Mark did say, I asked Mark if he's had any past experiences with following a blood trail of an elephant, or whether he thinks it could have been pregnant or shortly giving birth. And that certainly is a possibility, but he said he had also once followed a leopard that was bleeding and established that it had digestive problems which were causing it to bleed. Was the end kind of prognosis that they gave. So it could have been either of those two things, or potentially something else, hard to tell. Well, impossible to tell, because we didn't find it and find out, and that's the only way to be sure out here. Still no game viewers out, so it's just us out here. Afternoon, Kelly. Kelly's just sent through a question on Twitter asking how we ID tracks of lion and leopard and distinguish between the two species, and also between the genders, between male and female. And size is a key factor in the tracks, although a small lion would look very similar to a large leopard. So well spotted. We did try and stop for a beautiful male steenbuck, but he ran off. And Brian thankfully spotted the European roller that you're now looking at. So we've seen two of the rollers that we get in this area. The lilac-breasted earlier on, which is a resident here, and this is a migratory visitor coming all the way from Mediterranean Europe. Hard to believe, but they do come a long way. We also get the purple roller here, but not commonly. And further north in the Kruger, the broad-billed roller, that's incredibly beautiful. Almost actually worth me getting my book out, so that's what I'll do. Will it spot something that I can fly down and hunt for us? Time will tell. Back to Kelly's question. Like I said, a small lion, you could get confused with a large leopard, for example, but it's uncommon. A large lion will be walking around on its own. There'll be lots of tracks indicating it's a pride of lion, and obviously leopards are solitary. So there's different things that you can look into like that to help you establish what's going on. Also, between male and female's tracks, the back pad of males tends to be a lot more rounded, whereas the female's back pad tends to be more angular at the edges. So that is something else to bear in mind when checking. And look, sometimes we're wrong, so we try and accurately get as best as we can, but sometimes we do get it mixed up. And a lot depends on the substrates of the soil you're tracking in. Some soil and sand leaves a lot clearer prints and a more realistic print relative or of the actual size of the animal's footprints. Whereas you can imagine in soft sand like a riverbed, that would be leaving a larger depression and not as clear of a track as it would on fine soft sand or fine dusty sand on a road. What are you thinking there, Brian?
I was hoping I was going to fly.
Oh, it almost appeared to have seen something there the way it jerked its head to the side. Looked like something got its attention. Oh, well, it seems to be kind of elongating its neck a little bit. Maybe it has seen something that it's thinking about flying down and snatching. Questions just come through from Darren on Twitter asking whether drones are used to help spot game in the Kruger. and not as far as I'm aware, and if anything they would be illegal to use here because of all the poaching that's going on in Africa, especially South Africa at the moment, because South Africa houses a very large population of rhino, probably the largest in Africa in terms of a country, and therefore we're experiencing terrible poaching at the moment, and the only drones that I guess are being used are in anti-poaching projects, but they are illegal and cannot be used out here, as poachers could obviously be using them themselves, and therefore they are not allowed. I'm just going to give a quick update on the radio. It is a good question though, Darren, and it would be a useful tool to use going forward, but at the moment they aren't used. Afternoon, it's Scott here. Yeah, very good. Cold, but good. I was. Kunyuma was on a diker kill on Twin Dams, just west of the road on that 2-track that runs north of Philemon's, or that the drainage that runs from Philemon's Dip. He was there this morning, but at 9 o'clock he had finished the kill and wasn't in the area, but that's where he was last. Sorry, my radio is scorro, but I'll let you know if there's any other updates. Okay, Brian, well, I don't think the European roller is going anywhere this afternoon, or at least before we go.
Yeah.
But I would like to show everybody the other rollers that we do get out here, because they are really pretty birds, and there is one more that we could potentially see here, which is this one here at the bottom, the purple roller. It's considerably larger than the other rollers. Then we have the broad-billed roller, which occurs up in the northern Kruger, really beautiful. It doesn't really look like the other rollers very much, but it is one. And then this one here, this is possibly one of the best ones to see, the racket-tailed roller. They're really rare, and also only seen up in the northern Kruger. I've seen them only once in the Porphyry Triangle, and they've got these beautiful tail streamers that kind of stand them out of the rest. So we have seen the European and light-breasted this afternoon, and potentially the purple, but these other two it would be highly unlikely to see here, sadly. Very pretty family of birds though. Good. Brian, what are your predictions on the weather, sir? Look down there, what's happening down there? Is that just hazy or is it rain?
Could be the monsoon coming.
That could.
It doesn't seem like rainy clouds.
No, it doesn't. But it does seem like trouble down there. I hear you though. The clouds aren't here, but there's that feeling in the air that I'm getting. Questions just come through from James in Kansas City. Good afternoon, James. And James is asking what services a private guide will offer, and I guess ideally why would you want to use a private guide as opposed to just using the guides that are offered to you at all the camps that you go to. Depending on the private guide, there's different ways of doing it, but most private guides will essentially act as the travel agents. So you will book all of your destinations, or the private guide would, in correspondence with you, decide which are the best places that you'd like to go, book you in there, book all your flights, organize your whole safari just as a travel agent would. Now, the perk of having a safari guide plan your safari is that safari is what they do for a living, whereas travel agents may not necessarily know exactly what you or what they are sending you to. They may never have been to the case sending to you. A lot of the top agents these days have been to camps that they would send you to. It's almost like a prerequisite. They would send you to. It's almost like a prerequisite that agents would have been to camps now that they refer clients to. But I think the fact that you are dealing with somebody that knows the industry well and will typically be taking you to camps that he's not been to just once, he's been there several times and understands how they work, understands how to get the most out of those camps as possible. If you go to a camp without a private guide, you're going to have a great stay, but with a private guide who knows the extra perks and extra things that can be achieved and created by the lodge to enhance your stay, that is obviously going to happen, because the private guide can suggest certain things, i.e. a private bush dinner, as opposed to not having a bush dinner at all. They can pull strings to enhance your stay because they know what lodges are capable of doing, and they can push the managements of those lodges to go out of their way for you. But just another thing is just comfort and ease of knowing that you're going to be often picked up or met at the airport when you arrive in Africa, and every step of the way you're going to have somebody there with you, making sure that every guide and every lodge looks after you and makes the right decisions along the way. Another big thing is continuity. If you go on a typical kind of 2-week safari to Africa, you may go to 3 or 4 different lodges, having a different guide at every stop. And you often find that guides may try and outcompete the guides from previous camps, or they'll know what you've seen, of course, but because you'll tell them, we saw some lion at this camp and we didn't see leopard, so we'd really like to see a leopard here. So they will have an idea of what you'd like to see, but they have no idea of what kind of a person you are. Whereas going with a private guide, after your first 3 days, the private guide, and after having dealt with you in correspondence planning the safari, you would already have built up a relationship and understand one another to a degree, and that relationship over the safari will grow, and then the private guide will therefore be able to fine-tune and make sure the guides cater for your needs, knowing what he does about you. So it's just knowing your client better than a typical safari guide would from having spent more time with them. So those are a few of the perks that I can think of off the top of my head. There are some tracks that have been heading down this road. They look like large male leopard tracks. But having said that, I haven't had a very close inspection, so they could actually be lioness. So I'm just going to get out and have a proper look here. nothing appeared to head down. There's two roads that fork down there, so I'm guessing it could well have veered this way. Well, I've come up with nothing. They were just behind us, not too far away. But now I don't see anything. What's the time? Still early. And then a lot will depend on the individual private guides. Some are photographic specialists, so they may then obviously focus on helping you with your camera and using your camera, the post-production, or you get other specialists, birding specialists, so you get really people that are really exceptionally interested in ornithology. So then they'd make sure they take a guide with great birding qualifications and skills on their safari just to maximize their stay. It's not to say that you're not going to get a good guide at any camp that you go to, but typically private guides have been in the industry for longer and are more experienced and therefore potentially going to give you a better experience than the guide that you may be getting at a camp that you go to. And I was at that stage once in my life. I took my first game drive and those poor guests had to deal with the first time field guide, you know, and I know I wasn't nearly as comfortable as I am now with guiding, and it's understandable like that with anything. So you may find at some of the lodges the guides may be young and full of energy, which is great, but not necessarily very knowledgeable or skillful in the job yet. Whereas private guides, like I say, will typically be more experienced than guides you may be getting at lodges. This is a general rule that in South Africa your likelihood of getting good guides at camps you go to is higher than most other countries because we've got a very high level of guiding qualifications required to be able to legally guide in the country, whereas other countries that I've been in have got almost no national qualifications or legislation that's required. It's really easy to become a guide in some countries, so you may find that the caliber of guide in those countries is not up to scratch, and that's plain and simple in how it is. A lot of countries also only have local African guides, and even though they may be very, very knowledgeable and have grown up in the wilderness area in which they're guiding, often language can become a problem, and it's something that I've experienced and witnessed on many different occasions. The fact that a language barrier and even major cultural differences make it difficult for the safari to run as smoothly as it potentially would if people understood one another better, and that's for obvious reasons. So those are a few of the things that you will avoid by taking a private guide, but most of the time private guides get their business through referrals, and past clients will tell their friends to use certain people, so it is usually with a referral, and you typically start building up a rapport as being a certain type of guide, and that works for some people and doesn't work for others. So depending on what you're looking for, like I say, whether it's photographic or an ornithological wizard, you can search accordingly. Well, there's one hippopotamus that we can see at the moment. Ooh, hold on. There's that little baby poking its head up there on its mother's back. No. But there's one using the back of another one as a rest for its nose, so it can continue to breathe permanently, yet the rest of its body is under the water, with just its nostrils and eyes sticking out, and there's also a grey heron just behind them. Looks like it's midway in a hunting operation. Okay, that was a grey go-away bird that just let off its very distinctive call. Can't see it from where we are. It was right in front of us, but on the other side of a bush. So I couldn't see it, but when it flew off, we got a glimpse. Okay. Sounds like a woodpecker. Just trying to get a view of it, but can't seem to establish where it is. No, can't spot it. Two go-away birds. Getting ready for the sunset. Although they would be very early if that was the plan, because it's only in another hour. Although I guess they may be preempting it, because I think it's about to duck behind some clouds and we may have a fairly gloomy afternoon from early on. Not gloomy, but dark afternoon from a little bit earlier than normal. We are going to get into an area now where the signal's not great, so there's a strong chance we will lose signal. That's once we get out the other side of this low-lying area. Come back, and again, thankfully you did not miss out on anything. And we shouldn't have issues that I can think of. Is that there's two things that we deal with and or that can cause trouble. One is the low-lying areas where we don't get signal, and another is in the final control. Issues there in space with the sound. Technical issues elsewhere outside of here, away from us. So those are the two kind of factors. And like I said, from outside, I don't want to be going into any low-lying areas again. There's some buffaloes. Oh. We're going to leave those buffalo alone, as we've got greater plans. Top secret and classified, so at this stage we are about to let you know of the plans regarding the rest of the drive. As I said, it's top secret. I'm only kidding. We don't even know what's going to happen next. Mother Nature might, but we certainly don't. Negative. Wildebeest, if you can head to that to Ingwe track, we'll meet you there. Oh, wonderful. Perfect. John has just asked a question regarding what my speciality is as a guide out here, and I would say I'm a bit of an all-rounder. I haven't really focused on any one area more than the other, although walking, my walking qualification I took seriously, and I've done a lot of walking trails, so I do pride myself as a walking guide. Oh, these female kudu are in absolutely wonderful condition, as are most of the herbivores at this time of the year. So yes, John, my walking qualifications are and experience is probably higher than your average guide out here, and it's something that I love to do and love my guests to do when I do have guests, and I always try and promote walking. It's not for everyone though, it certainly isn't, but I do try and highlight the benefits of walking to clients, and also again fine-tune and cater a specific walk for the specific clients. Some people obviously may want shorter, less strenuous walks, and also may want to avoid encountering an animal at all costs, whereas other clients would prefer to do longer walks, and not more strenuous conditions necessarily, but just longer walks, and may really have a keen interest in approaching dangerous game on foot, which is an exceptional rush. So I'd say that's one of my specialities, and my photography is getting there slowly. I do love my photography, so photographically I would be able to help, yes, most of your average people in using cameras that they often buy specifically for the safari, but may often not know very well how to use it, so that skill can come in handy out here that I found over the last few years of my guiding. The buffalo thorns are high in demand at the moment. We saw giraffe feeding on them this morning, and now there's kudu feeding on them now. So a tasty plant obviously at this time of year, and a lot depends on the time of the year. Animals will feed intensely on certain plants when they're at their best, and you'll notice these changes as the seasons progress. Our animals will alter their diets ever so slightly, but feeding more predominantly on one bush relative to another. Hey, wildebeest. I'll probably be there in about 5 minutes. The other side, so yeah, drive along it there to where we left Kunyuma this morning. Ideally you could find him somewhere along the way. Sorry. Questions just come through from Janice on Twitter. Good afternoon, Janice. Welcome. And Janice has asked how one would protect themselves when out walking dangerous game areas. And when walking with guests, I'll always carry a high caliber rifle. the minimum caliber that I would use would be a 375, which is a very large caliber rifle that can stop an elephant in its tracks and any other of the dangerous animals that could potentially cause trouble when on a walk. So that would be the minimum caliber required, but have more typically used a 458, which is a larger rifle with more stopping power. And it depends on the individual guide which ammunition you would like to use. You've basically got two options, and you can use a soft nose head, which will mushroom and cause a lot of tissue damage, which people tend to like to use if they feel they may be approaching lion or leopard that could cause trouble, because they move so quickly. By using a soft bullet, if you do hit them in the body, you've got more chance of causing serious damage to them. And if you do hit them in their head, their skull isn't hard enough to stop that soft bullet penetrating and killing it. Whereas with rhino, buffalo, elephants, hippo, because their skulls are so big and hard, a soft nose may not penetrate the skull and therefore not kill the animal, which is what you would need to do if it got to that stage. So I prefer to only use solid bullets that only would work typically with a headshot. If you shoot an animal in the body with a solid, it doesn't cause much damage and it just goes straight through. But I prefer to use solids because even if you're tracking lion, you could come across an elephant. And if you've got the soft nose and thinking that lion might cause trouble, what are you going to do when an elephant charges? Because you won't be able to change the order that you've fed them into the magazine. So carrying a rifle is critical, and carrying a rifle is one thing, but being proficient and well trained and well practiced in using it is critical, because the speed that animals are coming at you is obviously very, very fast. So you do need to know how to use that weapon under extreme time pressure. Oh, this is wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. Glistening in the mud. So yes, that is what you would carry for protection. Other things you can carry for protection are pepper sprays, which would be good for cats. I would prefer to use them on cats than any other animal, I guess, if I needed to. And you also get thunder flashes or flares that just create a loud bang that you can also use. But thankfully, your chances of getting attacked by an animal out here are very slim. They will 9 times out of 10 avoid contact with humans and avoid the risk of injury. So thankfully that is the case. If they do charge, certain animals will often stop if you act in the right way. Most of the time that would be standing your ground. However, if this individual charged you that we're looking at, standing your ground is not going to help you very much at all. And in all my walking experiences and hours spent on foot in dangerous game areas, I've only ever come close to shooting an animal once. And that was an elephant bull that had actually mauled somebody 4 days earlier and nearly killed them. And the fact that that elephant had overstepped the boundary, that human-animal boundary, and knew very well that it can quite easily overpower a human, made for an interesting 20 minutes, as it had myself and 2 guests pinned against a tree. And it continued to charge us, leave us, move a few meters away, and then charge us again into within a few meters, stopping, like I say, 2 or 3 meters from us. If it had have taken one more step, I would have had to shoot it. But But that only happened once. Thankfully, though, I had a handheld radio, and on that radio, I got a hold of the lodge, and they came and rescued us on a vehicle and actually had to chase that elephant away with the use of a vehicle. Well, that was their plan. As soon as the elephant heard the vehicle coming, it turned and started heading straight towards it. So that guy got quite a fright, the guy who was coming to rescue me, and he thought he'd be chasing the elephant, but the elephant ended up chasing him, and that gave myself and the two guests time to escape. But other than that, one experience after countless hours spent on foot, that was the closest I've come. And when you know what you're doing out here, like anything in life, you can avoid trouble and avoid problems. So when you're walking, listening to birds like oxpeckers, they can forewarn you that there could be animals such as buffalo in thick vegetation ahead of you, and that would cause you to detour. Or you skills of tracking allow you to know how fresh tracks are, pick up on sign of buffalo moving in the same direction that you are, or elephants moving in the same direction as you are. So your situational awareness, which only comes from time out here, you can't learn it in a textbook, is critical when being on foot, because there's so many small clues and hints that can give you information which avoids getting you into trouble. Whereas if you just walk down one of these roads and didn't know what sounds you were hearing or tracks you were seeing, you could stumble right into trouble, of course. So I hope that answers your question. And we're going to leave this guy at the health bar here. Very envious. It looks incredibly soothing.
Look how warm it is.
Oh yeah, it's probably a bit warm. Although it's, yeah. Maybe tomorrow we'll come for a tip, Brian. If it hasn't been pre-booked by buffalo again. So we are now approaching the area where we last saw Kunyuma this morning, and it's going to be interesting to snoop around here, because I wonder if he hasn't just moved that kill. I would have been surprised if he managed to finish all of it so quickly in the time that we left him this morning. Welcome back, and that was obviously one of the satellites causing trouble, because we weren't in an area where signal plays an issue. We have just passed by the tree where Kunyuma was feeding on, well, had his duiker kill, and I'm just continuing to have a quick look through this area. If we don't have any immediate luck here, we shall just continue, because it is really thick and a difficult area to search from, because even if I do find him off looking on foot, there's a strong likelihood we won't be able to get to wherever it is that he is hiding. Try and get that bird. Oh. Sorry. There was a Burchell's kukul.
Stop.
Oh, well done, buddy. Oh, it just ducked behind. Well done. I didn't even know where it was at the end there, so well done on staying on it.
One of the nests just contained. They went in with some nesting material.
Well, let's have a closer look. Oh.
Yes, I think it is.
Do you think
I
so?
can still see them there. That's the giraffe.
Yeah. It's going to be very difficult for you to see or for Brian to show you. I'm not sure if it had a kill or was that nesting material or a small bug that it may have had. Either way. So this is the Ingwe track, and there's a few logs you may have seen there. We just needed to move those out the way to allow this track to be fully accessible to us, which just allows us to explore this area. And if it wasn't for us creating that little clearance, we may well not have found Kunyuma yesterday evening. So I heard one game viewer, but all that he did was get a report from us as soon as he heard that there was nothing guaranteed out here. He didn't come onto this property, so it is just us searching this property, which doesn't make things any easier for us. But it does make it more peaceful, not having any radio chatter, or knowing that if we do find anything, we'll enjoy the sighting to ourselves. Christine's just asked a question. Afternoon and welcome. Christine's asking whether oxpeckers are the only birds that groom the animals and remove ectoparasites off them. And largely the answer to that question is yes, but I have sometimes seen wattled starlings on buffalo, but they're not necessarily feeding on any ectoparasites. I think they're more just catching a ride and looking to feed on insects that the buffalo chase up when they're walking. So as far as I'm aware, there aren't any other birds that will help groom the animals and get rid of any parasites on them, unless I'm forgetting an obvious one, which is possible. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but no, it's just the oxpeckers that I can think of that will actually feed off animals, or feed off the parasites that latch themselves onto the animals. Well, just to let you know, we could well end up seeing VM driving one of the other vehicles, and he's got a cameraman from a TV show that's doing a small clip potentially on what we've been doing out here, so they may be getting some shots of us driving past, so don't be surprised if you see VM and a cameraman position getting some shots of us driving around doing our business. Hello. This looks like the same giraffe we saw this morning, the same three we saw this morning. This is the medium-sized one. Now I'm wondering if we are somehow going to be able to loop ahead of them and get into a good spot to view them. But it will probably not be too easy because it is very thick in here. But good to see we have some oxpeckers doing the grooming, as we've just spoken about. You get two different types of oxpeckers. You get the red-billed oxpecker, which are the ones we get commonly here, and you also get the yellow-billed oxpeckers, but we don't see those very often here, and they're less common than the red-billed, but very similar looking. Other than, obviously, as their name suggests, the yellow-billed oxpeckers have got yellow beaks, whereas the red-billed have got red beaks. Other than that, they look very similar. Alex, if you could just relay that message through to VM.
See the one poking through the hole there?
Oh, look at that. Awesome. Did you get the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, well done. So yeah, no problem to position yourselves wherever you want to, or let me know where you want me to go. I haven't moved at all far today, and I suppose there's no real need to. There's so much food around at the moment. Life is good for the herbivores, and as I did mention this morning, it's so wonderful to have a relative abundance of giraffes back in the area, as we did go for a couple of weeks where we didn't even see tracks or any sign of them. And interestingly enough, about the tick conversation we had a little bit earlier, it's incredible how much of a help these oxpeckers are to the different herbivores. And I'm just going to double check the statistic that I read in my book the other day, because my memory has not helped me in this little situation. But it's an astounding figure as to how many ticks they can actually feed on daily from studies. So 100 engorged adult ticks per day. I mean, that's doing a huge amount of help to these animals. And they say as many as 12,500 tick larvae, so the baby ticks, per day. Now, you do the maths. Without the oxpeckers feeding on these animals, they would be covered in ticks, literally. And again, this giraffe is feeding on a buffalo thorn. What's it seen? What have you seen, giraffe? Could well have seen something. Could be anything. But it's looking very intently in a certain direction. And therefore we shall go and investigate what it could be that it's seen. It could be a false alarm. It could have just seen a small animal like a warthog or a steenbuck moving through the vegetation. Or may just have seen a stump, and just like we occasionally make mistakes, it could well have, but it is still looking very intently in that direction. I've just looked back over my shoulder. What I can even try and do is be able to see if I can get a shot of where it's still, if it's still looking back intently, it'll be nice for you to see. Oh, you kind of can just see its head poking out there, looking right towards us, and it hasn't changed position at all. So, not the best shot, but you can see that its head is very focused in this position. What can you see from up there? See, she's so much taller than us, which obviously gives her a considerable advantage when it comes to spotting things. There's another termite mound I've just seen over here. Maybe something crept up there. No, nothing there. Oh well. Certainly worth poking our nose. I really wonder what it is that it saw. Oh! Sorry, spider. Hopefully we'll be able to leave most of its web behind. Oh, it's not looking promising. Let me see if I can do a better job with my hand, but we've got it stuck in a golden orb web spider nest web. And I'd like to try and not damage any further. Really quite a cool opportunity this, because you get an idea of how sticky and how golden the actual webbing is. You'll also notice a lot of remnants of different bugs that have flown into this web and got caught and been fed on. And spiders will often only suck the hemolymph or bodily fluids out of insects. It doesn't actually process the exoskeleton a lot of the time. So that's the best we can do, sadly. Here is the spider, and you'll be able to see it from there. Got it there, Brian?
Yep.
Well done. So this looks like it could actually be a male. Males are a lot smaller. This would be a very big male. Hard to tell, but the males will live on the same web as the female, often on the other side of the web, because females often eat males when they get the chance. So the male hides on the other side of the web and they actually mate through the web. So that's something that maybe we'll be able to show you in the next few days, but sadly there's not many large golden orb webs around at the moment, so it makes it a little bit difficult. And there was one here, but we've sadly crashed into the web. Okay, well, we shall continue now and see what's around the next corner. Any suggestions, Brian? Any lucky feelings of ideas of anywhere you might want to go? Okay. Happy with that?
Left is good.
Cool. Now, left or right?
Better right.
Well done. Good call. Copy, thank you. Questions just come through from Beth. Good afternoon and welcome. Beth is asking what one of my favorite things would be to see before, and I really would love to see more than one leopard in a sighting together. Lions taking on a buffalo would be good. A cheetah sighting, a cheetah doing anything, a cheetah sleeping would be good. A cheetah. A python eating a fully grown male impala would be good. I've got a long list of things that we could hope to see. Pangolin, I've only seen one in life, so pangolin would be good. Porcupines are really cool, so porcupine would be another nice sighting. So there are really so many things out here that we can hope to look forward to seeing. But any which one I can't pin down. I have actually been thinking about more than one leopard in a sighting together. You know, for example, in Cayenne, a female with her 2 one-year-old cubs, or Karula mating with Mvula would be a good one. Adult leopard combo. Brian, what would you like to see?
Definitely a cheetah, any shape or form.
Yeah.
much just that. That's the golden one.
Okay, I guess that is the major one missing off the list.
Yeah.
Lots of buffalo tracks heading towards Treehouse Dam, which is where we are approaching now. So we could well see some buffalo there, but that wouldn't be a major surprise. They're there almost every day. I always forget about that route on the road. Sorry, Brian. Well, the buffalo must have come and gone already, because it doesn't appear to be anybody home here, other than the village weavers who are always here, but they tend to calm down very drastically in the evening. There was a big bird of prey that flew off there. What could it have been? Oh. Well, this bird that I think I've just seen could be a crowned eagle. It's an awesome, awesome bird and a very rare one to see in this area. I'm just having a very close look at the tree that it's in, and then we're going to try and get a closer visual on it. But it is far away. And I'm just trying to confirm an identity on it now, but it's too far and too thick for me to tell. But I can see it perched there. Let's just hope it sits there for a while. Just going to reverse a little bit and then see if I can't get a different angle. Ooh. Scary stuff reversing down this dam walk because it is narrow. So let's see if this doesn't help with getting a better angle of where it landed. No, no good. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue forward, and then hopefully there's a road that will take us fairly close to where it landed. And if we can see a crowned eagle, that really would be the jackpot in terms of birds that we could hope to see. If you stayed there, I can come back down. Well, I am going to come back down. Just looking for an eagle here. Just so thick, doesn't look like we're going to be able to get any gaps, but keep trying. If we could show you a crowned eagle, that would certainly make my day. Oh, it is actually looking promising. I think I can see the tree that it landed in. It's gone. It was perched, I'm fairly certain, in this marula tree to our right. And it's certainly no longer here. It's a huge bird of prey, the crowned eagle. And that's what I'm almost certain it was one, because they've got a very distinctive, deep, deep wing.
What are the markings?
It's kind of almost tiger striped, you could say. And it's got a barred white tail.
So white patches on each wing, like so big.
It does have patches, and it could be an immature one. That's the one thing that got me, is I did see those white patches, which could be indicative of a lesser spotted eagle. But the size of it... Oh no! But we might still be able to tell who it is as it flies off. Oh. It could well have been a lesser spotted eagle. So that's okay then. It's not a train smash that you didn't set, and I really do think it was a lesser spotted and not a crown. So like I said, it'd be rare to see a crown here. They prefer thicker forest than this open woodland. Not much to see here at the dam, so we shall continue. Okay, copy. Thank you as well, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. All good there, Brian?
100%.
Do you need some water?
Yes, please.
There we go. Of golden orb spiders do we have? And there's two that I know of, the golden orb web spider and then the garden orb web spider that occur here. Those are the major ones, but there are also lots of different types of smaller orb web spiders. So I'm sure there may be more that I don't know of, but the garden orb and the golden orb are the two that I do know of in this area. The garden orb's really beautiful. It's got a large abdomen, a much larger abdomen, almost kite-shaped or diamond-shaped abdomen, and incredible silver and yellow colorations. I think they're more impressive than the golden orb spiders, personally. So if I had to choose a spider to be building a web on my windowsill, I would choose the garden orb above the golden orb. The garden also has a funny little zip-like pattern that it builds into its web, and different speculations as to why this little zip-like pattern is on the web, but it could be to simulate kind of grass or anything that an insect could land on, and they may see this little landing pad and fly straight into the middle of the web. So that is the one theory, to decoy prey into the web. This is where we last had sign of the two big elephant bulls and one small elephant bull following the common calf. There was certainly love in the air, and we didn't get to see any action, sadly, but maybe they are still lurking around these parts. It was really funny watching these two big bulls, watching every movement, but kind of trying to be all cool and calm and collected about it. But you could see every time she took a few steps away, they would both be hot on her heels. So really funny to watch these massive beasts trying to act like they weren't really doing anything, yet their every move was focused, evolved around what she was doing. Well, my predictions rain are beginning to look worse and worse, which is a good thing that I got that one wrong. There's not that feeling in the air, but there's still a few clouds building to the south. Thankfully, I think we'll make it before anything does happen again, if it does even happen at any stage. That's a little quick update on the weather. According to me, the weatherman on the planet, but my thoughts as to what could happen. It has cooled down greatly, that I can assure. Interesting this time of the year how often the wind can pick up and die down. It's dead still. Not even the blades of grass are. There's a tiny little bird in this bush that Brian's trying to sneak up on. It's the rattling cisticola. You can actually hear one calling nearby. But it's a bird we seldom get to see up close, and it had just gobbled something up. I wanted to check closely if it didn't have a nest hidden anywhere here. Well done, Brian. Quite interesting to see that funny tail movement that it does. Oh! Well, sadly it's out of shot now, so not much good. But glad we did get a glimpse of this rattling cisticola up close and personal. See it maybe continuing to hunt through this bush, it looks like, so it wasn't coming to nest yet, it was coming to look for little bugs. Oh, there it goes. Well done, Brian. Stealthy camera work. Hello, boy. I think this is a different one to the one we saw at a mudwallow not far from here when we drove past earlier. Well, it could well be the same one, I'm not sure. This one's ears are very noticeable though, and raggedy and torn. Hey. What you thinking there, mister? Okay, just chewing the cud then. As I would be doing if I was in a mudwallow. I would certainly be chewing the cud. It'll be so interesting to know what he thinks of us. Judging from his facial expressions, nothing too good really. Doesn't seem highly impressed. Toodle do, enjoy your bath. It could well be the same one. He was in this mud wallow on our right hand side earlier, and it seems he's just moved to a slightly different venue. Yeah, the double wallow combo special. 2 wallows for the price of 1. Okay, just under half an hour left. Questions just come through from Ton in the Netherlands. Good afternoon and welcome on board. Ton's asked whether the vegetation here in the Sabi Sands is similar to the Kruger, and no, it's not. It varies greatly depending on where you are in the Kruger ecosystem, and a good way for me to show you this would be using my bird book. So I do believe there is a map in here somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So this is the Kruger National Park map. As you can see, it's a very long reserve, north-south, and not very wide. It's about 200 miles long. Just over 200 miles long. And about 20 miles wide on average. The Sabi Sands, where we are, is situated in, what shall I use as a tool? There we go. The Sabi Sands are situated in this area over here that we're in, okay? And we kind of where the stick is here at the moment. Then the Manyeleti, where we stay, fills in this other little corner or gap here, both which are open to the Kruger Park. So even though on this map this area is white, it is still wilderness area. So everything right of the stick now is wilderness area. The bottom half is the Sabi Sands, the northern parts is the Manyeleti. So that gives you an idea, and that happens further up the Kruger. There are other segments like this one over here, for example, that are also national park, well, not national park, privately owned land that are open to the national park. And because it is so long north-south, it does differ greatly in vegetation. And on this next map that I paged to, we can see the different colorations taking you through. Either right up in the north we get beautiful baobab trees, and it's described as baobab rugged veldt, then sand veldt, mopani forests, broad woodlands, open areas, so the Lubombo mountain range stretches through. So there's a lot of different vegetation zones within the Kruger National Park, and even within the Sabi Sands, depending on which property you go to, you will find quite different scenery and terrain, depending on where you go. River frontage. There's 2 massive rivers that flow through the Sabi Sands, one being the Sand River and one being the Sabi River, this one over here. And those 2 rivers alter the vegetation drastically for the properties within the Sabi Sands that have access to those rivers. where we are here, we do not get access to those rivers, sadly. So that's an example of, depending which lodge you go to in the Sabi Sands, you can expect to see different terrain and vegetation. There are even a few lodges within the Sabi Sands or properties that have fairly prominent hills and rocky outcrops that give you elevation in what is otherwise a fairly flat, undulating terrain. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but yeah, the vegetation does differ greatly depending on where you are in the Kruger National Park. And where vegetation differs, obviously herbivores differ, and you can find certain herbivores that you will never find here, but you find them in other parts of the Kruger Park. So, and different densities of the same animals that we may get here. We may get a few zebra here and a few giraffe, but we'll get much higher densities in the central parts of the park and the western parts of the park that I've seen. Sorry, eastern parts, where there's some large basalt plains, large open plains, good for cheetah, good for the plains game. So a very diverse ecosystem. Cover that, thank you, Alex. Wendy in Florida has just asked whether there are any indigenous people living in this area, and there certainly are. There's local African people living in here and working in this reserve, but well, they don't live within the actual reserve. It's privately owned land, so it's land that potentially their forefathers would have lived on and amongst. Also, something important to realize about South Africa countries, there's not much culture, raw culture left here, or any really, to be honest. So you don't see people wearing traditional clothing as you would still see them doing in countries like Kenya and Tanzania, to name two that come to the top of my head. So yes, there are local people that are their forefathers and their forefathers were always on this continent, whereas mine I don't think were, and obviously they live around us, but nobody lives naturally in the wild or as they did many years ago in South Africa anymore. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, that is the long and the short of it. But yeah, that is the long and the short of it.
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted.
Welcome back. Not sure what happened. So we are just slinking through this area where Kunyuma was last seen. He had his kill up in the marula tree on our left hand side. When we left about around 7 o'clock this morning, and then when we returned just after we closed down, just to double check what he was up to, he had disappeared, and we did have a thorough look around the base of the tree. Interesting. So I was saying, answering Brian from Toronto's question, the Kruger National Park opens up into Mozambique, so it's a trans-frontier park, and it also actually opens into Zimbabwe, where those us and those two countries meet. And yes, you can cross from South Africa into Mozambique through the Giriondo border post. I've never been through there, and I'd love to do it one day. And go and check out that Mozambican part of the reserve. But yes, you can. There's an official border post there where you can cross through into Mozambique and then continue your safari down to the Mozambican coastline, which is really beautiful. And that's what I would do if I did the same trip. Or if I did go through that border post, I would start off on a regular safari and then make my way down to the coast for a coastal adventure. And you do get some beautiful untouched coastline the further north you go up in Mozambique. Great fishing, paradise, big white sandy beaches, palm trees, lots of rum lying around that you stumble across. It's a very nice country, Mozambique, and it is slowly recovering after civil war. And Alex will be there, and the next week he's just said over the radio. So he's looking forward to Mozambique and all its goodness. He's going to do some scuba diving there, and I know the place he's going, he's in for a treat. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of Mozambique. And it used to be a country with some of the wildlife Edens of Africa. But sadly, in the Civil War, almost every animal and thing that moved in that country got shot. So slowly those areas are being reintroduced and animals are getting back to normal there. So good prospects for the future. But as is the status of most African countries, nothing is really guaranteed or stable relative to other countries out there. So, but the general movement is in the right direction, which is wonderful. The ocean certainly is going the right way in Africa. Let's just hope it continues that way. And if anything speeds up and intensifies, because there still are some magical areas being lost and some really special animals, also a huge threat from a combination of lack of habitats and also poaching for certain individuals. Habitat destruction, I think, is still one of the major problems that conservation across the globe faces. got a question from Heather in the UK. Good evening and welcome. Now, Heather has asked a question that I'm very interested in, and that is whether Karula or quarantine have been seen recently. I think it's fair to say that quarantine is more recently than Karula, but it was maybe a week or more ago that we last saw quarantine. Karula, I can't even remember when last we saw her. It was weeks and weeks ago. I've only seen her, I think, 3 or 4 times at the most. So sadly, I haven't got to know her very well. Kunyuma and quarantine know her very well. I'm very lucky to have had them around, because it's uncommon to have basically 2 extra leopards within a territory that should only have 1 dominant male and the 1 dominant female. The male's territory in Mvula is much larger than June and stretches out onto other surrounding properties, but Karula's territory, and it is often the case, the females have got smaller territories. This kind of encompasses this camp. So we could expect to see those 2 leopards just on this Juma property, and a few more on certain fringe territories overlap. We haven't seen Mvula and Karula very much, but thankfully, because Karula's 2 youngsters and also Mvula's youngsters, he was the father of them apparently, we have had essentially these 2 extra leopards within this territory where they're still tolerated. How much longer they'll be tolerated, we don't know. It was another question this morning. How long do you think they'll be tolerated by Mvula in this area? Quarantine and Kunyuma, the 2 young males, it's hard to say. I said 6 months. I reckon they'll be not seen nearly as much here as they used to be, and may not be seen again here for the rest of their life. Which would make sense, because they need to move out and spread their seed elsewhere, not in the same area where they were born and raised, as they could therefore then mate with their sisters or even their mother if the opportunity arose. Questions just come through from Doug, asking whether between Kunyuma and quarantine, depending on who's dominant, will one force another out of a territory? And they certainly will. They'll fight over women, they'll fight over territories. That's 100% sure, and one of them will be dominant over the other. So that certainly is true, but that'll be a battle that they have away from here. If they ever do have it, one could head east, one could head west from here, for example. So they may not necessarily cross paths and need to fight for their own territory. You'll find that once they do move off, they're not immediately going to start fighting and trying to acquire their territory. They're going to fly below the radar and try and get bigger and stronger and wiser until such a point in time comes that they're confident that they could potentially overthrow another male that they would have been slinking around and using his scent marks and his vocalizations, that he'll be bold and call often, and they'll just listen and avoid him and keep track of what's going on until they get to a point where they feel that, you know, they may hear him calling and think, you know what, I'm tired of hearing you calling. It's time for my call to be the call that sounds out over these lands. And then potentially something may happen, but it won't be a while, I don't think, until they start looking for fights. And a lot depends on the individuals. I've said it once and will say it again. There are just so many variables out here, and there's no set rule book or formula that any leopard is going to stick to or follow as it grows up. it's the same for humans. I mean, you can think of even between, if you've got kids, how even though you've given birth to and raised two of the same being, or two people, how can they be so different? And it's no different to animals and the paths that they take in life. So, just 5 minutes left. Where are all the animals hiding that usually are here in the quarantine clearings? You guys will do. Parading past us. Ah, even better. And this is the last one. Sadly, Brian couldn't shuffle around anymore, but we can. So let's see what they get up to next. These impala rams, really beautiful specimens, all three of them. And they almost performed on cue there. I'm certainly glad I'm not an impala at this stage of the evening. As you know, it's about to get dark. As the cover of darkness sure does make things more difficult for them, spotting any potential predators. And I'm surprised that they're heading into thick vegetation, because typically they would hide out in the middle of a clearing so that it's difficult for predators to sneak up on them. In thicker vegetation, there's more cover for predators to use to sneak up on them. So I'm not sure where they're heading or why they are heading into this thicket. But they're big boys, and they've survived this long, so they know far better than me how to survive out here. Anyway, there's just a couple of minutes left, so again, a big thank you for following us this afternoon, and a big thank you to Brian on camera and Alex in final control. And thank you to the impala as well, and the giraffe we saw this afternoon. What else did we see? Not too much. The buffalo mud wallowing.
Some decent birds.
Yes, some good birds. But a big thank you for following us, and like I said, it is just myself for the next few days until Friday afternoon. Mark will be back, so then it'll be the two of us again. So I'll be back in the morning, and already looking forward to that adventure. I've got a feeling that some lion are going to be about tomorrow. It's just been too long since we've seen lions, so I'm hoping they're going to be back on the property, and if not, there'll be some other stuff to look at, no doubt, but it would be nice to try and see some lion, and I'll look forward to whatever it is that we do find tomorrow. But then we'll just stop here and let Brian point out into the sky for the last few seconds, but from the team down here, thanks again. Have a wonderful day or night depending on where you are.